finding a way. Work was challenging for a Friday. On the production floor, a machine broke down. The technical team and I worked together for the majority of the day to diagnose a number of hardware and software problems that left us all tired. I've been running a printing company on Sydney's northern suburbs for the past 12 years. On this specific Friday night, I parked my car in the garage and took a moment to recline in my seat. I was worn out and ready for the day to be over. It was never easy to be the owner of a printing company that produced one-off and commercial printed things. At home, I was annoyed because Louise, my wife of more than 15 years, had not shown me much attention lately. I'm a sentimental person. Little touches on the arms or kisses, along with genuine affection, are what give me energy. But Louise has been sullen and reclusive lately. She loves it when I give her my whole attention and is a quality time girl. I make a regular effort, but managing a business and dealing with your wife's rejection can be challenging. I'm Cameron Other, and let me introduce myself. Louise and I are 42 years old, and between us, we have 2 daughters. Carrie, our oldest child, is a physical replica of her mother from when she was younger, age 18. She is astute, independent, and self-assured. She is an engineering student in her 3rd year of college, and after she graduates, she wants to come work with me creating new printing equipment. Yes, you do realize that she is 18 and enrolled in her 3rd year of college, right? She really is that intelligent. You will also notice that I mentioned Louise in my 15 years of marriage. That's because of Sarah, our 2nd daughter. With Carrie, we were okay being single, but when we learned we were expecting Sarah, we decided to be married. Sarah is, for want of a better phrase, our hippie child. She generally follows the path of least resistance, doesn't hold strong ideas, and goes with the flow. Despite not choosing to apply herself in that manner, she is just as intelligent as her sister. She is a social butterfly who, at 15, spends most of her time with friends or engrossed in Discord conversations on her phone. Our 2 girls spent the weekend away. Carrie was out with her boyfriend, Robbie, while Sarah was staying with friends. Louise and I would be alone at home when I expected them both to return later on Sunday afternoon. I began to mentally unwind from work as I sat there contemplating the coming week. Louise and I could have a few drinks and some honesty to work through some of our recent problems now that the girls are gone. I exited my 2-year-old Ford Ranger, picked up my luggage, and entered the kitchen. Since Louise wasn't there, I took a tumbler, filled it with my preferred drink, Kraken and Coke, and settled back to listen to some relaxing music. I was merely trying to clear my head of the day as I stared at the paint on the walls. Although the malfunctioning device was partially functional again, the loss of income would be at least $10,000. More if next week's remedy isn't satisfactory. That was a sizable portion of my employees' pay in the Sydney market. Shoving my thoughts out of my head, I heard heels click and there was movement. My breath left me when my wife Louise entered the room. I think Louise is a very attractive woman, and she is probably 3 months older than myself. She had put on a little weight after giving birth to her 2 children and was now in her 40s, but she maintained her curves in the appropriate places since she routinely went to the gym and ate healthily. Despite our recent problems, Louise was everything to me. She had big brown eyes and was what most people would describe a natural dirty blonde. Wearing a tiny black dress that hugged her curves and pushed her chest up, displaying just the necessary bit of thigh to be tantalizing but not scandalous, she looked put together and ready to head out. She wore makeup and had her hair pulled back. She looked at me and set her handbag down on the table, practically overflowing. I told her, "You look good, my love," and she grinned back. I took a sip of my drink and groaned. I looked up and down and apologized. "I'm sorry, Lou, it's been a huge day, and I just don't have the energy to head out to dinner tonight." She gave me another smile, but this time it was devoid of affection. I felt a shift in me, like my day was moving from challenging to really bad. With a somewhat unsteady tone, she said, "That's okay, Cam. I wasn't planning on you coming out with me." I gave her a look. In all the years we had known each other, we had almost ever gone out alone. Even on the rare occasions when she did go out with her companions, she never dressed for the occasion. "You weren't?" I asked, a little curiously. I took a big swig from my beverage. "Then why are you dressed up like we're heading out on an extraordinary date?" Louise appeared momentarily uncertain about herself. "Cameron." She paused, glancing down at her reflection. I said, "You're leaving me." Louise gasped. She reached out. "No, of course not, Cam." But I drew away and laughed angrily. "Now you're about to tell me that this has nothing to do with us, that it's something you have to do for yourself. You're going to tell me you deserve this after raising 2 children and being dedicated to our family." I arched an eyebrow at my wife's increasingly deflating state. I eyed her large, heavy purse on the table. I threw the words at her, my voice taking on an accusing, argumentative tone. "Judging by your bag, you weren't looking to come home tonight. So, it's great to see that after all these years that you are so casually walking out on our marriage without giving 2 crap about what this is going to do to us. Cam." She paused, turning to face me. I didn't interrupt her this time. Sighing, she said something quietly. "We both work so much, and I know you're doing this for us. But my seeing Roger will only be for a while. Roger, as in Roger Felworth, head legal counsel at your work. Roger Felworth, who is married with 3 children under 10, that Roger Felworth. I responded. My wife didn't say anything for a moment. However, the fear in her eyes let her know that I was well aware of who her true love was. She was taken aback by it. She exhaled. Yes, Cam, that Roger, he's been so good to me these last few months. Since you haven't been here, he's BS, I exclaimed. Louise asked, taken aback by my uncontrollable outburst. What? You heard me, Louise, I said, BS. You are rationalizing your way into having an affair. Sure, we work a lot, but saying that I haven't been here is a load of absolute BS, and you know it. You're the one that has been pulling away. I have been trying to spend time with you for months, but you give me the cold shoulder. At least now I know why. You're out fooling around on me. I stumbled to my feet. She stumbled. Cameron, I am not playing around on you. She nervously responded. Tonight, I mean, this weekend was to be our first time. I gave her a brief sneer before turning and storming into the kitchen for another drink. Okay, so you're going to become even more of a dirty woman, not just one night, but an entire weekend of cheating on me, I said. I was really exhausted from work, but I required one more kraken. Louise moved to stand in the kitchen doorway as I was pouring a double. For the first time, she was not ashamed of her anger. Cameron, I am not, nor have I ever been a dirty woman. But, unlike you and your first love, Rose, I have never been with another man in my entire life. Roger tells me that I am not cheating on you because I am telling you what is going on. It's only cheating if I hide it. I almost growled at her. That's low, Lou, bringing Rose into this. That is a low blow, and you know it. At least she was polite enough to turn away. And you dead wrong, dear wife. It's cheating if I don't accept it, and I do not accept you taking another man to bed. I assume that your new man is having the same conversation with his wife. Looking down at her shoes, she faltered again. I don't know. I snorted, added some coke to the double kraken, and then turned to face Louise. Her expression was a masterful emotional mask. Most likely, he's lying his bottom off about having to be away and will be uncontactable. I shifted my tone. Has he kissed you yet? What? Inquired Louise. I pronounced the query. It's a simple question. Has Roger kissed you yet? Yes, she said with a flush. Has he touched you? Cam, that's none of your. She pulled her head up and glared at me before looking down once more and said, yes. Have you given him a quick one yet? I said, nodding. She turned aside as I asked the question, but I saw her nod. She said nothing. I was trying not to become angry and thought, well, that says it all, doesn't it? I walked out to the back deck and slammed the back door open so hard that it shook the house. My wife stopped giving me attention, rebuffing my attempts to be close to her, all the while getting more and more physical with another man. So, I guess that's it. We're done here, I said. Furious, I took a seat on a chair at the table of our rear porch. After a challenging day at work, I was eager to see my wife, but she is now accusing me of betraying me. Louise didn't arrive in the doorway for a good 5 minutes or so. Louise emerged attempting a more kind demeanor. Cam, I do love you, but I need to do this. I have just felt so stuck for the last year. Roger has been so understanding. So it will just be for a little while, you'll see. I didn't glance at her. Instead, I kept my eyes on the yard. No, Louise, you don't get it. It would help if you turned to me. I was supposed to be your best friend, your partner. But you have given yourself to another man and denied me the ability to be there for you. So now I don't know that I will ever be there for you again. She remained still. Cameron, she uttered quietly, confidently, yet nervously at the same time. You can't walk away. Roger tells me that if you do, I will take everything from you. I'll be able to take half your business away. I'll get the house, the kids, and then it will be easy to turn them against you. She wrapped her arm around my shoulder and walked ahead, her voice growing stronger. I turned to face her and drew my shoulder away from her contact, disgusted at what I saw. You would do that to someone you just proclaimed to love. You would cheat on me, threaten me, then believe you could get away with it. I barked. I would not want to, said my spouse. But Roger has advised me, in court, I will always be the one that comes out on top. You don't have much choice. I am sure that I will get this out of my system and return to you. You will be all right. You're stronger than me. I stood up abruptly for the second time that evening, but this time I spun around and gave the woman I was still in love with a fierce look. However, the rage and hatred I experienced prevailed. I yelled, you selfish, unfaithful woman. She retreated a step. You dare profess love to me thinking that from this moment on that I have any intention of staying married to you. So, you tell me I don't have a choice. Well, screw you, Louise. You have shown me that I have no idea who the hell you are. You aren't the woman I married. It's like something alien has taken you over. The woman I loved would never say that she would destroy me using my kids against me. So, who the hell are you? I stuttered, Kim. For a little moment, I chose a calm course of action and let the fury to subside, hoping to reason with her. Louise, if you love me as you say you do, then call this off, right now. I don't know if we can save our marriage with what you have just told me. You've been intimate with another man, even if you haven't screwed him. If you call it off now and we go to counseling, I promise you that I will try to understand what you have been going through. I will try to forgive you of your betrayal. She muttered, my betrayal. I gave a nod. Counseling. She muttered once more. Yes, Louise, counseling. You might not see it right now, but our marriage is in its death throes from what you just laid out. So, call it off, and let's get some emergency counseling. I'll call Rose now, then we can get her here tonight to help. Rose was my first love, and Louise was right when she tossed her at me earlier. However, it wasn't meant to be since we ended up falling in love with other individuals and in different places. But we were close friends, both of us, with Rose and her husband Toby. Until tonight, I never would have imagined that Louise would turn Rose's past and mine against me in a disagreement. Toby had grown to be one of my best friends over the years, and Rose worked as a therapist as well. We gave each other the ideal kind of compliments. Of course, the fact that we shared similar perspectives on a wide range of topics, including politics, religion, and relationships and faithfulness, helped. The fact that our children had grown up together also helped. Since their birth, Robbie, Carrie, and the son of Rose and Toby had been inseparable. They had started dating in the middle of the 5th grade. I was confident that, in the right supportive setting, their relationship would endure for a few more years. She defiantly answered, "No, Cam, I don't want Rose in the middle of this." She let out a sigh. "Look, Cam, I get how angry you are. You might think I don't, but I do." As I approached to correct her, she raised her hand. "Let me finish. You think I don't love you, but I do. You're right in that those threats were wrong. I should not have done that. However, it doesn't make it any less true." Gazing at the woman before me, I pondered whether the alien spawn that was influencing her mind was growing in number. "I'll make you a deal. I know that I have hurt you. But Cameron, I am going this weekend with Roger. I will go to counseling when Roger and I are done. It might be a while, but if you feel that counseling is that important to you, then we will go when Roger and I tire of each other." I said, "And what about the girls? What about them?" inquired Louse. I continued, my voice deadpan. "How are we going to tell them that we're separating?" "Cameron, we're not." She sighed and abruptly stopped speaking. "We are not separating. I've told you that sooner or later Roger and I will run our course. I'll come back. The girls will not be affected." I call BS again. I gave her a look. "And what about me? While you're off having your affair with Roger, what about me? Where is the love for me?" Louise hesitated once more before asking, What do you mean?" "Louise, I'm a touchy-feely guy. You have pulled away from me. We haven't had slept together in over 8 weeks. You haven't so much as kissed me in over 2 weeks. I do not feel any love at all right now, Louise. So, what am I supposed to do?" She gave me the impression that she had never considered this. It had escaped her that I may require something, some thought or care. She said, looking down, "I don't know. Roger says I need to be his for now." I lost it once more, disappointment, fury, and grief rising in me. Fuck Roger. "Oh, hold on, you're going to act accordingly and not give a damn about your spouse. Cameron, that's not fair." I practically shouted at her for cutting me off. "You're going to say denying me, your husband for a piece of crap, cheating on his own wife and denying me your body is fair?" Louise retreated one more step. I grabbed my glass, emptied its contents, and hurled it towards the concrete wall that our barbecue was resting on. It broke, and I discovered that my soul broke along with it. My shoulders slumped and I could feel hot tears streaming down my cheeks as I sank back down into the chair. For a few more minutes, neither of us said anything until a loud car horn from the direction of our driveway was heard. For the first time, I saw Louise's indecisive expression as I stared at her. I felt hollow and empty-headed as I turned back to face the desk. "Just go," I said in a whisper. My wife was gone when I turned around, but I'm not sure if she heard me. I guess I stayed still for approximately 30 minutes. I never would have imagined how upset I had been after the confrontation with Louise. I was stirred, nevertheless, by my phone, which was in my pocket. Carrie, my daughter, called. She wanted to let me know that she was heading home with Robbie to get her weekend bag of clothes because she had forgotten it. "Sorry, Dad, Mom's phone just went to voicemail twice, so I thought I would call you." She informed me cheerfully as she talked to me about the B&B Robbie she was attending this weekend. I attempted to contain my nose while I sniffed. "Don't worry, my love, your mother isn't at home at the moment. However, I'll see to it that your suitcase is at the door, ready for you to claim so you and Roger can continue your journey." She took a while to reply, "Dad." "Yes, sweetie," I moaned. I made an effort to sound normal. She did not accept it. "Who's Roger?" Carrie's query was clear from the tone of her voice. "Sorry, I meant Robbie. Sorry, Carrie, I meant Robbie." It's unbelievable that I tried to backpedal and made such a mistake. But Carrie was a clever girl, and I'd been let down. "What's going on?" When I remained silent, she hesitated. "Calm and Dad, you're worrying me," says she. "I'm simply having a bad day, Carrie. Nothing special. I'm just emotional since I had some issues at work and then had a fight with your mother," I answered. Not that I wanted to lie, but I also didn't want to give my 18-year-old daughter the entire tale. "Dad, please stop trying to hide the truth. You're attempting to mislead me about something. What has your mother done?" Her voice was accusing. "Sweetheart, it doesn't matter. I'll be fine." I attempted to ignore her. "I was just caught off guard by you. I'll be waiting for you with your bag. Don't let your weekend be ruined by our problems. I adore you, Carrie." Feeling like a trash attempting to keep the truth from my kid, I hurriedly hung up. After coming inside and splattering some water on my face, I went to Carrie's room and took her bag, which I knew she would set right inside the garage door so she could take it and run. Not for the first time, one of my girls had misplaced an item. Carrie rushed screaming through the back door directly at me as I was picking up the broken glass with a broom. "Do you feel okay, Dad?" she inquired. She had a worried expression on her face as she raised her brow to gaze up at me. Louise had often given me that look when she was concerned about me. But when she informed me about her plans to screw another man this evening, it was an expression I had never seen before. I dismissed her with a shrug and went back to clearing the glass off the floor. I said monochromatically, "Sure, sweetie, I put your bag in the usual place." As they watched, I knelt down and started sweeping the glass into a tray so I could put it in the trash. Robbie was waiting in the doorway with a grimace on his face when I got up. There was no fooling me. I took out a chair and sank onto it. Carrie took a chair, sat down across from me, and squeezed both of my hands. "You're not okay, Dad." Shortly after I spoke with you, Mom called me back. I could hear her in the car, and it sounded like she had company. "What's happening, then?" I turned to face my daughter. I believe she noticed something broken in my eyes. They had lost their shine. "That damn woman." My daughter nearly cried out, and she hurriedly brought Robbie back. "What is it, baby?" Sensing his lover was upset, Robbie inquired. He turned to face me. I felt elderly and melancholy, and I was still silent. "My mother is cheating on my father." Her words were matter of fact. "No, really." Carrie and Robbie turned to face me at that point. I slowly gave a head nod. "She gave me an ultimatum earlier, then left with her lover a while before you called me." I sulkily acknowledged. For the remainder of the evening, they sat with me. Then, at some point, Rose and Toby appeared. Robbie showed in with wine, a fresh bottle of Kraken, and takeout Thai. Everyone was horrified when I gradually revealed Louise's treachery and her ultimatum to the four of us. "Daddy," Carrie responded, "does Mum not remember the prenuptial that you both have in place? Louise and I were getting married as I was beginning my printing company. I had a six-figure sum of change from my parents to help with the startup cash. A prenuptial agreement that was drafted by their attorneys outlined a number of items. This stipulated that the house, cars, and children would remain with the injured party, and that if either partner cheated, they would only be left with their clothes and 15% of the joint assets. Louise never discussed the business during a divorce or separation. "I don't think your mother was thinking at all," I said, shaking my head. "She once assured me that telling me about it wouldn't constitute cheating." Carrie laughed a little. "Daddy, whether or not she tells you, there is no justification for cheating. She seems to have been emotionally unfaithful to you for several months already. For weeks now, Sarah and I have both observed that something wasn't quite right between you. We were simply unable to solve it." After nodding, it occurred to me, "Oh my God, Sarah, I really ought to speak with her. I have to reassure her that everything will be okay." Carrie gripped my arms once more. "Daddy, please don't lie. It's not going to be all right. Mum has killed something in you tonight, and I don't know if I can forgive her." "She's still your mum," I answered, sounding more like a whiner than anything else. "Mother or not, there is no reason to do what she did to you." She spoke sternly before giving me another, softer squeeze. "I'll be all right, Sarah and I will speak in the morning." She was also aware that something was off. We ate, and despite my bad attitude, I discovered that I had 3 helpings of the delectable Thai food. But I must say, I felt a lot better after eating and speaking with Carrie, Robbie, Rose, and Toby. "Everyone, would you mind if I spoke with Cameron for a little bit?" After Louise's question, Rose inquired a little later in the evening, and I noticed that I was starting to back off a bit. That gave the other 3 the signal to go inside. Rose settled into the chair Carrie had left in front of me. She seemed to notice the expression on my face, turned to face me with a smile, and then glanced over her shoulder to the rear door, where the other 3 had disappeared. "You have an amazing daughter there, Cameron," stated Rose. I looked back at Rose and nodded. Rose was a stunning woman with red hair. She had been my first love, as I had previously indicated. We had sporadic dates over our high school years till we transferred to different universities. She later fell in love with Toby, and shortly after that, I met Louise, who I was completely in love with until tonight. It never worried Louise or Toby that Rose and I had surrendered each other our virginities during schoolies week after reaching legal age. Though it never got in the way, it was history. Despite or perhaps because of our past, Rose and I were close, but we would never consider betraying our marriages. Our family's unity was reinforced by the fact that our children were dating. Carrie and Robbie were somewhat aware that Rose and I had dated in our youth. We didn't all hide that. We also knew that Carrie and Robbie were sleeping together now that they were both 18. But we also knew how much they cared for one another and didn't want anything to go in the way of that. Carrie did tell Louise and me that Robbie's 16th birthday was the first time they had slept together. It was her gift to him on her birthday. Rose brought me back to the present with a tap of her foot. "Don't lie to me, Cam. How are you? I practically know you better than anyone else." I gave a head shake. "Rose, I'm not sure. Well, I knew we were having difficulties, but this..." I made an airborne motion. Then, in a hushed tone, "I detest what she has done to me and to us, Rose, but I still love her." Even though I detested and want to yell, cry, and punish her and her lover, I still adore her at this moment," I said with a howl of agony. Rose nodded, fully in the role of a psychiatrist now. She said, "How can you handle this, Cam?" I gave her a quick glance. "Rose, please stop talking like this." I smirked pitifully. "It isn't effective for me. I've known you for too long as well." She grinned back at me, waking me from my reverie. However, how can I reply? At minimum, a separation is likely to occur, probably enforcing the entire prenuptial agreement in the divorce. Even when Rose told me she'd given that prick Roger a quick one, I urged her to stay. I pleaded with her to stay, telling her we could arrange therapy. However, all I receive are threats that she will seize everything from me and turn my girls against me. Rose gave a nod. "You're correct, Cam, and I believe you understand that I am unable to serve as your counselor in this matter. I know you too well. We will thus try to locate you someone to talk to tomorrow. But I'll be there for you through this with Toby as well. You are aware of how highly Toby and I regard you. Robbie and Toby are probably now attempting to talk your daughter out of wanting to kill her mother. Carrie hasn't seemed this irate since Candy invited Robbie to the junior high dance, I believe." She chuckled. In response, I chuckled softly. "You're correct. Regards, Rose. I apologize for this. It is not right for you to be in the midst of it." She brushed me off. "Cam, don't worry, we've got you covered. Believe me, we would be discussing your devastation and doing the same for Louise if it had been you who had stepped out on her." I reclined, saying, "Rose, I would never." Rose gave me a smile. "Calm down, Cam. You wouldn't, I'm sure." I felt free to speak it because of this. If you and Toby had looked alike, I would have mistaken you two for brothers. You two are among the most devoted men I have ever encountered. At just over 5 feet, Toby was rather short, but he had blue eyes and blonde hair, and he was stocky and full of muscle. I have a mop of brown hair myself. I'm tall and fit because of my work, but I'm not Toby's level. His personality reminded me of you, which is probably why I fell in love with him." Her voice trailed off slightly as she spoke longingly. We both chuckled. It was an old conversation that had long since stopped being embarrassing, demonstrating my close friendship with Rose today. We spent the next hour talking through my sentiments, which were mostly betrayal and despair tempered with anger and a numbness that I couldn't quite put my finger on but that Rose could understand. When we went inside later, Robbie and Carrie were cuddled up on the couch, and Toby was watching a movie on one of the other lounge chairs. "Hello everyone," I said. Carrie was at my side, giving me a hug right away. "How are you doing, Daddy?" Worried, she inquired. Rose grinned when I turned to look at her. "No, darling, I'm not, but I'm so happy you're all here. If you weren't, it would be far worse," I answered. She gave me a hug. "Robbie, Dad, and I are spending the night here. We desire that you not be abandoned." "But Carrie, what about your weekend away?" I inquired. I told Robbie that there was nowhere that Carrie and I would rather be right now, and he dismissed my worries. "Cameron," he said, "I've already received credit for the B&B while you were speaking with your mother, so we can reschedule for a weekend away at any moment." Carrie was correct, though. I believe you need us here in light of what has transpired. After that, we ended the evening together, and I was unable to protest. With promises to bring over breakfast in the morning, Rose and Toby bid each other farewell. I wished Carrie and Robbie a good night and said I would take a shower and spend some time reading in bed to clear my head. "We'll get you some coffee in the morning, Dad. I know I'm not going to sleep well tonight, so I can only guess how you're going to," she informed me. I smiled miserably, said thank you, hugged her again, kissed her forehead, and went back to my room. After taking a shower and finally changing out of my work clothes, I sighed and went back into the bedroom. There were traces of Louise everywhere in the room. To make matters worse, when she packed for her weekend away from me, she left some clothes on the bed that she had forgotten to put away. I put those in the closet or on the floor with the plan to pack them up with the rest of her belongings tomorrow. My phone rang when I was reading one of the most recent novels in the fantasy Spellmonger series on my iPad in bed. I had been reading this series for years. I thought for a second it may be Louise, but no, it was just Toby telling me they were back home and they were thinking about me. I sent them a thumbs up emoji in gratitude. He replied that they will see us tomorrow morning at approximately 9. I was going to put my phone down when something occurred to me. I opened the Find My Phone app and sent Louise's phone a ping. I sighed when it pinged to a site in the Blue Mountains several hours distant. Our security system occurred to me when I took a snapshot of the ping for my records to demonstrate that she was chasing after me. Our home was equipped with one of those Swan security systems that used installed cameras to record both audio and video, then stored the recordings on a hard drive within a cabinet. We dispersed 8 cameras throughout the area. The ones in the front yard were programmed to detect movement and send Louise and me an email. Nevertheless, every camera continued to record continuously until the hard drive became full, at which point the cameras began to replace the previously recorded material. I logged on to view the back patio camera from earlier tonight because the drive itself could save up to a week's worth of footage for all 8 cameras. As I got outside, sure enough, the camera captured the moment when Louise and I were talking about her infidelity. While checking the front feed, I also noticed a big guy getting out of a brand new car and kissing Louise before they hopped in and drove off. Now I had a solid confession, a video showing her walking away from me to sleep with Roger, and evidence that she was not where I thought she was, a ping from her phone. I took out my laptop, entered the Swan security system directly, exported the films, and sent an email with the divorce papers attached. My phone rang, and it was Louise, as I was fumbling with the words for my lawyer and had just added the films to the email. With her lover hearing the Find My Phone ping, she must have been awake all along. I let it reach my voicemail. I received a voicemail notification a bit later. I performed it. Cameron, Roger and I heard my phone ping. We're telling you now, don't do anything stupid. Sooner or later, we will finish, we can talk, then you can do things my way. If you do anything other than what I tell you, Roger will destroy you, and I will take everything from you. I was listening to Louise. In the background, I could hear Roger laughing. Yes, little cuck boy. Trust me that it's not going to be forever. Still, if you say anything to anyone, I will take a personal interest in taking you apart piece by piece until you've lost everything. Your wife, your kids, your business, and let's not forget any respect you ever thought you had. When Louise and I are done, she will come back to you. Just play ball, and everything will be all right. Now, Louise and I need to get back to loving. I believe that she was about to give me her bottom before you rudely interrupted, something I don't believe you have ever had. I heard them both giggling as they hung up the voicemail. I sat for a second in shock. Although I had heard a lot of offensive things over the years, the guy's blatant arrogance and disdain turned on a switch in me, and I decided it was time to destroy them rather than myself. I revised the email to include my desire for a lawsuit against Roger Fellworth in addition to my desire for Louise to get divorce papers at her place of employment as soon as feasible. I wanted my lawyer to take action even though a short Google search revealed that alienation of affection was not illegal in Australia. I desired for them to suffer. In addition, I planned to sue Louise and Roger's employer for income loss at my own company for either supporting an affair or failing to disclose wrongdoing that upset me psychologically and negatively impacted my own company. I was aware that the lawsuits had little chance of success, but even merely pursuing legal action against each party, along with a divorce and the enforcement of the prenuptial agreement, would severely damage the couple's conceit. I knew, therefore, that as I clicked send, I had not yet obtained Roger's wife's data, but if I did, I would get in touch with her and tell her what an infidelity jerk her husband was. I would like to tell you that I slept soundly knowing that I was taking the cheaters to task after sending the email, but that would be lying. Before I closed my eyes, I heard Carrie and Robbie get up while I tossed and turned till the sun came up. When I listened, it seemed like Robbie was going outside to retrieve the promised coffee in his car. I went to the kitchen after throwing on some pants and a shirt. Upon entering the room, Carrie greeted me with a warm embrace and inquired about my sleep habits. I gave a headshake. Me neither, she answered. I tried, but I just couldn't. I just don't get how Mom could do this to you, she said. I mean to us, it's not just you. For a time, we avoided talking about her degree from university until Robbie came back with 3 very welcome large coffees. I sipped the amazing drink. I've always enjoyed a cappuccino, with the chocolate on top boosting the coffee's flavor as it danced across my palate. Carrie and I both sighed at the same moment. After laughing, Robbie said, "You two are exactly the same." Then, he became serious and asked, "So no sleep either, huh?" No, in fact, I was quite busy emailing my company lawyer when I got a voicemail from Louise after I did a Find My Phone ping. I played the voicemail that Louse and Roger left me, and then I spent the next 10 minutes outlining how I put together a package to file the divorce lawsuit against Roger and their place of employment. As Carrie received the message, I could see her struggling to contain her tears. She whispered, wiping her eyes with her coffee napkin, "That woman is not my mother. My mother could never be so cold as to insult my father or let another man belittle her husband like that." I totally agreed, as did Robbie. We started to wonder where Rose and Toby had gone at around 11 in the morning. We were starting to become worried an hour later because they had promised us they would be bringing breakfast with them at 9. Robbie attempted his father's phone after trying his mother's. Then I tried them too, when he was unable to connect. After making a phone call to Mama's house, our regular breakfast cafe, I learned that Rose and Toby had stopped there on their way to my house around 8:30. Josie, the proprietor, is an old woman in her 60s whom we had all come to know. After I hung up, I became really worried. Robbie's phone rang as I was gathering my keys so we could go look for them outside. After picking it up, he was on the floor with a pale face in about a minute. I retrieved his phone. "Hello, this is Cameron Other. I'm Robbie's girlfriend's father. Who am I speaking to?" I replied. "Mr. Other, this is Police Constable Colleen Sharp. I have the unfortunate news to let Robert know that his parents have been in a major accident." I took a deep breath as I stared at Robbie, who was lying on the ground nearly unconscious. With her arm around him, Carrie was staring up at me with desperation. It was me who posed the query. "Are Rose and Toby all right, Constable?" "Mr. Other, I take it that Robert can't talk right now," was said after a brief silence. I confirmed to her that was true. I got Robert to respond yes when I asked, "Mr. Other, are you able to get Robert to give me verbal acceptance that I can talk to you about this matter?" The policeman stopped and inhaled deeply. "Around 8:45 this morning, the Gettings car was impacted by an out-of-control B-double semi-trailer that brakes had failed. In the resulting accident, their car was almost destroyed. I'm sorry to say that Mrs. Gettings is currently in surgery right now. Unfortunately, Mr. Gettings didn't make it. With Rose undergoing surgery and Toby dead, I believe I turned as pale as Robbie and collapsed to the ground. I gave a throat clearing. Which hospital? My raspy voice demanded. Now looking panicked, Carrie mentioned going to the hospital. She seemed like she was about to cry too, so I knew something major was happening. I forced myself to swallow. This was no time to give up. They are both at Royal North Shore Hospital. Can I assume that you and Robert will be there soon? She asked. Her voice had a touch of melancholy that I could sense. I could see this stranger was having trouble, even though she was acting professionally. Yes, I croaked out, requesting information on our destination and what to say when we got there. The three of us were out the door in 5 minutes. I wanted to floor it, but I stuck to the speed limit. In less than 30 minutes, we were outside the trauma surgery of the hospital. The staff were making every effort to reassure us. We kept asking how Rose was doing, where Toby's body was, if Rose would survive, and what was going on with the other driver. PC Sharp entered and made her introduction. For the next 20 minutes, we talked. Robbie gave me permission to represent him once more. She told me the narrative. A completely laden, out-of-control truck crashed into Rose and Toby's automobile as they were driving, leaving nothing but scrap. Toby, the driver, had taken the brunt of the crash, with his side of the car practically blending into the passenger side. Several injuries, including a fractured skull and multiple punctures to his torso and upper body, claimed his life as he was being transported to the hospital. There were more wounds, but they are too horrific for me to list them here. These kinds of accidents are terrible. Rose's condition was likewise critical. She also had 2 fractured legs, several cuts, and a little fracture on her skull. But Rose's greatest problem was that she lost part of her left forearm and her left hand. When the semi picked up the vehicle, it was crushed. The surgical team was putting in a lot of effort to repair multiple punctures and suture the wound. Rose also suffered severe blood loss from not being able to stop the bleeding, but happily, if there is such a thing in this kind of accident, she had not bled out because when the emergency personnel removed her, her mangled arm was above her head. The remainder of the day was a blur of phone calls and discussions. I must give it to Robbie. Following his initial period of shock, he spent the afternoon sitting with me as we began calling people and waited for word of Rose. We called Toby's sibling up in Brisbane after his grandparents. Next, we called Rose's brother. Carrie and I had to assist Robbie with the paperwork for his father's passing when the mob arrived. After Carrie called Sarah, she was at the hospital in less than an hour, where she sobbed beside Carrie and hugged Robbie. After some time, she gave us a look. "Where's Mum?" she naively inquired. Carrie and I exchanged a look. With bitterness, Carrie remarked, "She won't be coming." Sarah glanced first at Carrie and then at me. With a grim question, my youngest daughter said, "I take it that's Roger's doing." It would be an understatement to say that Carrie and I had an incredible day filled with everything that could possibly go wrong. "Sarah, are you saying you know something about your mum and Roger?" I said quietly. With a serious nod, Sarah's eyes began to well up with new tears. Her shoulder drooped and I said, "I saw Mum bring in some new lingerie a couple of weeks ago. I asked if she had bought them for you, Dad." It took a few days of pestering her, but at one point when she wouldn't tell me that the underwear was for you, she got upset at me, then blurted that it was for a date for some guy named Roger, telling me there wasn't a chance in hell that you would ever get to see it. Carrie asked in a very accusing tone, "Sarah, why didn't you say anything?" My youngest daughter would be a puddle on the ground if her pose could go any lower. Glancing at Carrie, she said, "I don't know. We've been talking about how apart Mum and Dad have been recently. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed away from home as much as possible once I knew something I didn't want to know. I didn't want to face Mum," she said. "Or you, I'm sorry, Dad." I drew her into an embrace. "It's okay, baby girl. I wish you would have said something. I didn't know till last night, but it's all right." She broke down instead of finishing her idea. "I'm so sorry, Dad. If I had said something, then perhaps Auntie Rose and Uncle Toby." It was until later that night that we departed for showers and to change into new clothes. After we made our peace, I took Carrie and Sarah home with me. Carrie then drove her car back to the hospital with Sarah, and I trailed behind them. When they got Rose out of surgery on Sunday, I believe it was around 4 in the morning. She was critically injured, bruised, and still alive. She would spend many days, if not more, in the intensive care unit. Before taking any more action, they wanted her to wake up and ensure that there was no brain damage. Even in his anguish, Robbie asked to meet the medical team that had worked for hours to save his mother's life and was polite to the physician. I was so proud of my daughter's boyfriend that I wished with all my heart that I could name him my son-in-law someday. We stayed at the hospital for the remainder of the day. After learning that paperwork had been prepared and were ready to be served to Louise, Roger, and their place of employment on Monday, I went home and got my laptop and phone chargers. I was glad I had a damn fine attorney, better than Roger, I was hoping. I also made sure my duty managers at work would cover for me for a week because I needed time off after a family catastrophe. Although I wouldn't disclose to them that I had multiple emergencies, they were knowledgeable and could manage the situation. The good news is that a member of my support staff was able to resolve the remaining problems on the equipment that malfunctioned on Friday and into Saturday. We got to work with Robbie that afternoon organizing Toby's funeral. Robbie had left a note for their family attorney, giving them instructions. Robbie was attempting to be ready, but as long as Rose survived, it wouldn't be necessary. We spent several hours discussing the funeral before Rose's mother, Edwina, who is now older and in her early 70s but is still witty as ever, joined us later in the afternoon. She gave me a big embrace after giving her grandson a hug. I'd always been treated like a son by Edwina. She joked that I was the one who escaped her daughter, even if she liked Toby. She informed us that Toby's mother, Camilla, will visit later this week after she was able to arrange for a ride from her retirement community because she is unable to drive. As agreed, Edwina accompanied us in the hospital waiting area, and we had a relaxed conversation throughout the afternoon. When I asked a nurse whether we had to move, she shook her head, leaving me wondering if the staff would move us on. No, this, unfortunately, happens more than you would expect. But, as long as it's not too busy, then you are welcome to stay. We know the grief you are all going through right now. I know you need to be close to Mrs. Giddings while you wait for her to wake up. When she responded, I grinned and thanked her. As we all chatted and reminisced, time passed quickly. Louise was only mentioned in passing, and after Carrie caught Edwina up to date on Louise, she would always have a gloomy expression on her face when no one was around. Without glancing at all, I answered my cell phone at around 8 on Sunday night. News of Toby's death and Rose's injuries had been circulating all day, and our phones had been ringing nonstop. Hello, Cameron other speaking, I murmured as I observed Robbie putting his arm around Carrie and giving her an embrace. I watched with a smile as the two young lovers met and looked into each other's eyes. I witnessed I love you exchange and a soft kiss. They were growing closer while they were in grief. Louise chastised me over the phone, saying, "That's not the way to greet your wife. I told you not to make waves, or you would regret it. Roger is fierce and will take you down if you have said anything to anyone." Where the hell are you, Cameron? You were supposed to be home when I got here. I don't know what transpired with Louise during the weekend, but any uncertainty or regret I had seen Friday night had been washed away by the shrew of a woman who was now on the phone with me. I spoke, Louise, with a hint of contempt in my voice. Everybody stopped talking and turned to stare at me at the same time. That's me, you great lunk. Where are you and where are the girls? If you told them anything, I told you I would turn them against you. So, you had better get home now or I will make you regret. In the middle of my sentence, I hung up. Threats piqued no interest of mine. Louise would discover tomorrow that her carefully crafted story will come apart. I shrugged and said, the woman just got home. Her dad was audible, Sarah muttered. My youngest daughter and I had a one-on-one conversation for several hours today. I don't know why you picked up the call in the first place, I said. She had repeatedly apologized for keeping quiet, but after learning of her mother's extent of dishonesty, she became nearly as enraged as Carrie. Dad, in the divorce, I will be living with you, all right. As we spoke earlier, Sarah abruptly revealed to me. Of course, baby girl, of course, I gave her a hug. I grinned at Sarah as I turned back to the present. It came from instinct. I answered the phone mindlessly. I only needed a moment to orient myself. My phone rang again the very next minute, and it was Louise, of course. She made a dozen attempts to call in the next 10 minutes. She then attempted to phone the girls. Carrie grew weary of it after 30 minutes. She picked up the phone and exclaimed, "What?" It was Louise correcting our eldest child on her tone. "Mum, give up. Right now, I have no interest in conversing with such a dishonest, cheating, trash person. Here with me is my family, my father and sister included. We don't need you interfering with our pain at this time since we are in mourning." Through a torrent of swear words and swears that I never thought Louise could even string together, much less say to her kid, I could hear her yelling down the phone. The main point was that she believed Carrie was discussing with her the disintegration of Louise and me rather than Toby and Rose's tenuous situation. It seemed to me that Louise was unaware of what had transpired. Louise continued for a bit more, but Carrie cut her off. "Mom, before you start, yes, Daddy has told us everything too, so you know, I have zero interest in living in the same house as you. I have no intention of having you shout at me anymore. Mom, you are a filthy lady. You had children who looked up to you as role models and a partner who loved you. You've lost the respect of both of your girls and traded Dad for a friend who will probably dump you like a hot potato." Her mother was plainly talking when she halted. "Yes, Sarah told us what she knew, and so did I. She hates you just as much as my father and I do, but my dad is great because he forgave her. None of us wants you to be there when we go home, so take up your stuff, Mom." She paused once more and listened. "I won't tell you where we are or when we're heading home, Mom. Why don't you visit Roger's residence after calling him?" She pretended to pause for 30 seconds. "Oh, you can't. He's back with his wife, who doesn't know that he's a lowlife, infidelity-addling guy who helped you ruin your family's respect for you. Unfortunately, Mother." Louse opened her mouth to respond. "I apologize, but I believe they are calling for our flight. Later, I'll speak with you," she said, hanging up. She noticed that we were all staring at her and pointed to the phone she was holding. "Just said, wrong number," Carrie said. Everyone laughed in spite of all that was going on and how terrible the situation was. Even the nurses who work at the opposite nurse station. With a promise to return early in the morning, Edwina had made her way home for the evening. Sarah and I, meanwhile, were getting ready to head out for a couple of hours. Carrie and Robbie would remain longer, and at around midnight, Sarah and I would return, switching places, and allowing them to return to their slumber. As Sarah and I were packing up our belongings, a trauma nurse approached us. She exclaimed with excitement, "She's awake." We all grinned, and we all gave anxious laughs. We then inquired about Rose's health. "A doctor is checking her over at the moment. She's really out of it, but as she is awake, you will all be able to see her briefly." We rotated through to see, well, what we could see of Rose. Over the course of the next hour, there was something medicinal wrapped around almost every aspect of her. There were wires coming from almost every portion of her body. Rose had bandages on her head. What was most unsettling, though, was the wrapped stump in place of her left forearm. "Hey there, Petal," I said, addressing Rose by my alias. I referred to her as my Rose Petal when we first met. She would always give someone an earful if they called her that, save for me. "You gave us quite a scare back there, but it's good to see you're on the mend." She had a breathing tube down her throat and was still unable to speak. Of course, she was still under a strong sedative from whatever potent medication she was on. I didn't want to answer the question, but her eyes held it. She knew because I shook my head. Her left eye released a single tear, which was soon covered up by the bandages. That is how I felt about her for the remainder of my visit. I sat with her and quietly told her that I loved her, that she was part of my family, and that we would all get better together. When I finally left the room, a nurse gave me a tissue because she could tell I was tired. Unbeknownst to me, I had been crying. After expressing my gratitude, I retreated to the lounge. After hugging Carrie and Robbie for 30 minutes, Sarah and I left for home. Sarah and I were quite exhausted. Though we were all a little glad that Rose had woken up, we only managed to get around 3 hours of sleep before returning to the hospital to give Carrie and Robbie a rest. When we talked about sleep and how content we were, we grinned and drove. Rose was awake, but when we turned into our street, we both scowled. An odd SUV was parked in our driveway. "Crap," we both uttered at once. When I noticed that the front lights were on, I turned around and pulled up to the curb in front of our house. The drapes moved, but there was no door opening. "Should we go in or just drive away?" Sarah inquired. I sighed after shrugging. "I apologize, honey, but I don't think it would be safe for me to drive too far tonight without a break or some coffee, so we have to head inside. I propose that we enter now. You retire to your room, shut the door, and make an effort to ignore the unpleasant conversation that is likely to ensue." "You sure, Dad, I can stay with you?" I grinned. Sarah detested conflict. It was among the reasons she had remained silent towards me. However, the fact that she was prepared to speak with me about her mother's behavior revealed me how angry my 15-year-old daughter was with her mother. I took out my phone and pressed play. Sarah gave me a quick glance while using her phone in the same way. Walking up the walkway to the front door, we both got out of the car. After it was unlocked, we entered right away. Roger Felworth, the gentleman, approached us immediately after crossing the threshold. "Ah, there he is, the cuckold himself, the small one. Come back to seek pardon and going to play ball before I wreck your life?" he asked icily, possessing the haughtiness of someone who had their wish granted in the face of opposition. Roger stopped short when Sarah entered the room. With a kid present, Louise recoiled momentarily when her partner handed her a verbal discrimination lawsuit. "I'm too weary for this, if that's okay with you, Dad. In order for us to return, I'll make sure you're up by 11:30. She said nothing more than pricked to Roger and Louise as she passed them, leaving them both in disbelief. Sarah's door closed, and they attacked me once more. "Louise told you not to say anything to your daughter." With a heated tone, Roger said. I raised my phone. "I want you to know that I'm taking notes during our talk." I turned to face the two intruders and stated, "It has been recording since we walked in the door and will continue to be recorded until you leave." Louise paled as she turned to face me. Roger looked at the phone in my hand, shrugging, and then did the same. "Not important," he grinned. Roger was a powerful individual. He had wider shoulders than I did and was taller than me, but the majority of his bulk was made up of fat rather than muscle. He also developed jowls around his chin and was going bald. He was probably in his early to mid-50s, if not earlier. To be honest, I didn't understand why Louise would start dating someone with his background. I looked straight at my wife, ignoring Roger for a while. "Louise, you disrespect me even more by bringing your lover here after I begged you not to be here when I got home tonight. Is your depravity without depth?" "Cameron," she began, but Roger interrupted her. He moved forward by 2 steps and stepped into my face. "You duck, you listen here. You were told not to say anything and we both explained how things would work. I'm going to ruin your life right now." He spoke really loudly. He didn't give a damn that a girl of 15 could hear him. "You're not supposed to be here. Since my small daughter is in the adjacent room, I will urge that you be mindful of your language." "So the screw what?" he said. "She's not going to tell anyone, and neither are you." Just as quickly as we could react, he took the phone from me, flung it to the ground, and tramped on it. Then he gave me a menacing smirk and began to yell at me. "You're just a jerk printer whose wife begged me to put her to sleep because she was so tired of him. I spent the entire weekend sleeping with her." Louise made the decision to join in at that point. I was unaware of what he had done to her, but her next remarks made it clear that she was no longer my wife. "Yes, Cameron, Roger is 10 times more of a lover than you are, but you've warned the girls that things will get rough for you. Roger and I are going to have to destroy you, so I wish you hadn't said anything." "Louise, what are you?" I had no time to finish because old Roger gave me a haymaker as I was staring at Louise. I moved as much as I could with the blow, but it still hurt as I dropped to the ground when it struck. I cried aloud, massaging the spot where he had struck me. "What the hell, man? You hit me in my house." "Well, whatever I do to you, Louise will support it. She would tell the police that I had to defend myself when you came at me, even if I ended the relationship right now." "Boy, don't you get that I practice law? I adjust it to meet my needs. You might believe that you are a printing industry hotshot. However, my species produces the green that makes the planet go round." He burst out laughing. "I take what I want from who I want when I want, and there is nothing anyone can do about it." I turned to face Louise from the floor. "Is this accurate, Louise? Will you support this wipeout?" I remarked, getting up to stand. Roger threw himself on the defensive, prepared to engage in combat. However, he seemed to loosen up when I turned to face Louise. Though she appeared stubborn, she stiffened slightly. "I apologize to Cameron, but I will provide Roger with all the support he needs. You are just not the same man as he, even if he killed you." I gave her another look like if the foolish stone had struck her. What on earth happened to her for this waste of a human being to brainwash her so thoroughly? I sighed and shrugged my shoulders. "Well then, dear wife, there is nothing more to say, but both of you need to leave now, or I will return the sentiment that you just gave to me and unleash hell on both of you that neither of you will be able to look at anyone you know ever again without them ridiculing either of you." Roger growled, mistakenly believing he could take me after his earlier sucker punch. Roger was a huge guy, as I mentioned earlier, but he was all fat rather than muscle. Though I wasn't as large as him, my sturdy build from working on printing machines throughout the years plus my amateur boxing experience gave me the ability to fight when necessary. Roger charged at me, and I ducked under his nose and told him it was ridiculous that he would assault me in my own house. I tripped him, causing him to fall and destroy a coffee table, but he quickly got back up. Hearing the crash, Sarah stormed out of her room and began yelling at her dad to leave him alone. Sarah was screaming and attempting to escape while Louise grabbed her in an attempt to stop her from coming to me. My comment: "We will see what OP does with his wife in the end later in the day. Hope you guys are enjoying yourself today. We will see if OP is a strong man or not and see you in the final ending later."